about what is top of mind for you all to execute a successful proposal for this grant. So I really appreciate you all showing up so punctually. We will be recording this session, as you may have noticed, so that you can all catch up and learn about the tips after today. So to get us started, you all know that the Miami Foundation is investing in a stronger, more equitable Greater Miami through their community grants program. And they've teamed up with us at Radical Partners to power you all nonprofit applicants in submitting a strong mission-based proposal. So during this second workshop of a two-part series, the first one happened last week, and it was a Community Grants Program 101, just to share basics on submitting this proposal and how to go about that. Today, we're actually going to go a layer deeper into writing this proposal. So we'll get to shift mindsets from programmatic to mission-based applications. We'll gain some best practices for identifying and writing a really strong proposal. And we're going to develop some of the workflows to identify and sustain SMARTY goals so that we can hold our promises and report back on those grant-powered wins. So you all, if you attended the session last week, you've met the team at the Miami Foundation, learning from the community engagement and community investments team. So here you see Vicky Checo, Cheryl Saturnino, Joanne Kentent, Molly O'Doherty, and our friend Julissa Rivera. They were all there for the Community Grants Program 101 online last week. And if you missed it, please don't worry. This recording is available on the website, which Itza is going to be posting in the chat right now. This is their community grants info website where you can find details, the grant application, and further. But I'm sure you're asking, who is this woman who's talking? Her picture is not up on here. Well, as I shared, we will introduce you all to your strategy and grant writing support team. Thanks to the Miami Foundation, we all at Radical Partners are showing up for you with grant writing best practices and strategies to support you in drafting a powerful application that really allows you to flaunt your organization and your superpowers. If you don't know us, Radical Partners is a social impact accelerator investing in leaders, engaging locals, and co-creating innovative solutions to collectively strengthen our communities. And today you'll get to meet Joanne Marie Godoy, who you'll hear from next. She's our CEO here to share how to wrap your mind around this awesome application. And I'm Andreina Weichselbaumer. You can call me Dre, Director of Culture and Strategy, hosting a lot of the strategy and grant writing office hours, which you'll hear more about later on. I'm hosting them alongside our powerhouse of a Director of Growth and Innovation, Alia Mahmoud, and several other coaches and grant writing experts that are in our network. So are you all ready to dig in? Let's see some thumbs up. Here's a quick recap of what we're going to do. Thanks, y'all. Of what we're going to get into today. I want to ground us in why we're all here today and tie us to our missions. As I shared, Joanna is going to jump in to share how to shift your mindset from programmatic to mission-focused applications. We'll go into the best practices of writing a strong proposal, and I did promise a chunky Q&A part so that we can all get aligned and hear what your big topics are. And I've got a bonus for us at the end. One of our favorite tools, the SMARTY goals, to help us keep our promises. So I definitely want to get a sense of who's all in the room. We've got 85 people here, so I want to do that in a very productive and efficient way. I'd love for you all to leverage the chat and share first. What is your 5-word mission? So for us at Radical Partners, it is social impact accelerator supporting leaders. Let's see what you all come up with. End and prevent homelessness. All right, Jennifer, access to equal justice. Catherine is driving kids to a healthier future. I'm loving this. You've got your power punches all sorted out. Awesome. Okay, keep them coming. The next question is, what are you seeking to learn here today? It can be a one word, it can be a short phrase. Let's make sure we're feeding you and filling your cups with the information you need. How to write a strong grant. Got it. meaningful impact, focus on mission versus programs. Well, we've got you on all of those things. Lastly, something a little bit more fun. I want you to share one emoji that tells us where your mind is at right now. I love to get really creative with these emojis. Ooh, a dollar bag, money bag. Best practices, okay. Maria, so you're looking for the recording of the first grant writing session. Yes, absolutely. You can find that in the Community Grants website, where you'll also be able to find this one. So Itza will post the link up here. I see a lot of excitement in these emojis. I'm loving to see it. People are ready to get nerdy. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to our CEO at Radical Partners, Joanne Marie Godoy, to start sharing about shifting our mindsets.
Thank you, Dre. I feel like with all that excitement, we needed a drum roll. So I'm going to make it for me, for myself. Okay, my friends. So going back to what Andreina was saying, we're going to be spending the next hour together, and we're going to split it into 3 content pieces that you can take away with you, right? One is the mindset, then the more nerdy piece around the grants, and then for you to learn or enhance the knowledge that you have around SMARTY goals. So let's start with the hardest thing, which is for us to change our mindset. And for those of you who are familiar with grants and have been successful with grants, it's tricky in the sense that the Miami Foundation is shifting in a way to make it easier for us, but that might be harder because we've been doing it in a certain way. And for those of you who haven't, then great, because then you can start with this mission-based or mission-driven approach, right? So what we want to invite you to do is for you to move from focusing on what you're doing and how you're doing it, right? So to give you an example, we focus on, we are delivering a program for kids in X neighborhood. And we do that as an after-school program at X amount of time, right? That is being very focused on the programmatic activities, on the what you're doing and how you're doing. And what we're inviting and suggesting you to do is to move from that into talking about what are you trying to change, right? What is the impact that you want to have? And how will the community look like as a result of your work? So instead of focusing on the what, we're focusing on why are we doing this and where do we want to get, right? So it's more like a more visionary or a more futuristic approach. So let me go a little deeper here. So let's focus on what we mean here, right? So for those of you who have a lot of knowledge in grant writing, you at this point definitely know what inputs, outputs, and outcomes are. For those of you who are newer in the space, I'll just make a quick summary of that, right? Inputs is everything that we put in order to make our program happen. So that could be money, that could be food, that could be staff time. And then as a result of those inputs that we're implementing, the outputs are that then we will have 3 workshops, right? And 25 leaders will be trained throughout that workshops. And we focus on like the immediate result of that input. And then when we jump bigger into the outcome, that is the ultimate result, right? So because we delivered these workshops and 25 leaders were part of it, we will end up with like a more robust social impact ecosystem of leaders trying to address issues, etc. Right? So that was a quick summary of inputs, outputs, and outcomes. If you are not familiar with these terms, I think on a general basis, I would suggest you do, because a lot of grants ask for that. This time around, if you are familiar with these terms, we're suggesting for you to zoom out. And instead of focusing on inputs, outputs, and outcomes, for you to shift to the things that you're seeing in this column on the right. Instead of talking about inputs, let's talk about our added value, right? Instead of saying this is the activity that we'll put in, or this is the staff that we have, for you to talk about why that makes you different. Why does that bring an added value to what the Miami Foundation is trying to achieve with this community grants? We're inviting you to move from outputs to talking about your mission, right? So not necessarily to talk about XYZ activities, but what is larger than that, and what is the medium that you're using in order to achieve and to accomplish the third layer here, which would be a vision. And I'll be very, very blunt here and very honest here that us social impact leaders and nonprofit leaders, we see and therefore speak in problem-based challenges, right? We focus a lot on what's wrong so that we can come up with a solution. And oftentimes we cannot afford, because of our energy, our time, and our resources, to think, how do we want this community to look like, right? How do we want this community to then thrive? So that's where we're pushing you today. Think on that positive outcome and that positive impact. So here's the slide again, because once you move from inputs, outputs, and outcomes to added value, mission, and vision, second layer, flip it. And let's think of the vision first, right? Let's think of that big dream that you have, that big thing that you want to see in the community. And that's what we should be pitching and sharing with the Miami Foundation, right? This is how I want Overton to look like. This is how I want my neighborhood to look like. This is how I want kids at this school to be, right? Once you achieve that, and once you start sharing about that, then talk about the how. And then we go into the mission, right? And this is where you get to brag about how your organization is building towards that vision. And last but not least, what makes you different? And what makes you credible in order to achieve that mission, in order to accomplish that vision? So, Annie, I'm going to use you as an example, right? If I recall correctly, Miami Homes for All wants to make sure that every single person in Miami-Dade County has a safe place that they can call home. It is a beautiful thing for them to aspire to do that, right? So that's their ultimate vision. And then when we talk about their mission, then that's when we get to talk about they do advocacy, they have programs, And then the third layer is what's their added value? I wouldn't say against, but aside from other organizations working around housing affordability, like shelters, for example, Camilla's house, etc. So this is where Annie from Miami Homes for All would get to brag about their differentiation and their added value, so that we can build into that mission that will then accomplish the vision that we're trying to have. Can I get some emoji reactions to see if we're blowing your minds, if this makes sense, if you're loving it? Let me see how we're doing over here. Okay, Amy, I see your thumbs up. Frank's got it. Eileen likes it. Lena, I hope we're blowing your mind in a good sense. Okay. So that is some homework for you, right? For you to shift that mindset and to allow yourselves to dream and to think positively about what you want to accomplish and how you're going to able to accomplish it. So now we're going to move into section 2, right? About writing a strong proposal. Before you start thinking of this proposal and writing this proposal, you should be clear on these 3 factors that we just shared with you, right? If you don't so far, don't worry, you still have time. But for now, we're going to shift into writing the strong proposal with this new MO that the Miami Foundation has, right? So we are inviting you to follow these 7 steps. I'll go quickly here and then we'll zoom in, right? We're talking about what do you need to do and have before you start writing the draft. So that's the before. Then we're going to go into the during, the drafting and the creating the proposal, and then what happens after you submit. Okay. So moving to the next slide. At this point, you should be very clear on your impact. Let's go back one slide, right? You should be very clear on the impact that you're trying to have, right? So for that, you can look back at the mindset shifting that we're encouraging you to have, so that you are very clear on what you're trying to accomplish. Step number 2, I know this might sound simple and silly for some, but you really need to read every single thing that they put out there when the grant is out. And that means read the guidelines, read the deadlines, watch the recordings if there are some, because you really need to understand what the foundation in this case is asking for. So I always give the example, like if I'm invited to a potluck, of course, I want to bring a chocolate cake. I love chocolate cake, right? So I might as well spend a lot of time baking that cake and putting dulce de leche in the middle. And turns out that when I show up to the party, Amy, I see you laughing. Let's say I go to Amy's house and she's lactose intolerant and she's on a diet and she doesn't like sugar. So I spent all this time baking this beautiful and delicious cake. And when I get there, she can't eat it. And she might even be like disgusted at it because it's going to be so sweet and delicious if you ask me. So don't take this step for granted. You really need to understand what they want and what they need from you. And most importantly, what's the impact that the grant makers are trying to make, right? So you need to check that there is alignment between what they want and what you have to offer. So for this particular grant, in this next slide, we just took a screenshot of what they will fund with the community grant. And the Miami Foundation is very specific on these 6 focused areas, right? They're willing to invest around access to health and wellness, economic stability, inclusion, inspiring arts and culture, sustainable environment, and thriving youth and families, right? So several things can happen here. Either it's a slam dunk because this is what you do. For some of us, it might not be a slam dunk with our mission, but it might be that we want to challenge ourselves to become like a more accessible organization, for example. So we can use this opportunity to say like, you know what, we're going to try out, we're going to apply to this grant so that Radical Partners can become a more accessible organization and push out accessibility to the social impact ecosystem. So go ahead and challenge yourself. Now, if they don't seem like a slam dunk, if you don't have the team capacity in order to bend your mission a little bit towards that, it is better for you to say like, I'm going to pass this time around. Or else you will end up investing a lot of time and energy in a grant that it is not for you, that it is not aligned with them, and that it's just going to cause a lot of pain to your organization as you try to bend over to meet that, right? So make sure that you check for alignment and go for it if you think there is, and learn how to say no if there's not. More opportunities will come. So that's before, right? So ideally, either today you've done that already. If you haven't, you still have 2 or 3 more days in the week for you to get acquaintance with all of that. Now, let's move to the during. Maria, I see your question there, right? So we might be able to answer some of those questions and answers later. You can leverage office hours, but I think when it comes to you working around gender, for this particular grant, maybe it's not necessarily, you shouldn't focus on the organization at large, right? Because you're doing so many things, but perhaps focus on one of the things that the Women's Fund is doing that is aligned with what the Miami Foundation is seeking to do, right? So it could be either you leverage your economic pillar, Maria, depending on what you're thinking. I would zoom in a bit in terms of what the organization is doing around one of these areas, and we can talk about that later. So moving into the during, this is kind of how Radical Partners approaches every single grant that we apply for. So the first thing that we do is we map it out. Then we assign roles, we draft and review, we submit, and I'm going to zoom in into those. And after, we always do things after the grant. So zoom in with me and take notes for whatever's going to be relevant for you. And the way we're going to share this with you is to share it, thanks to Itza's ideas, to do it in a timeline that would work for you between now and March 10th, which is the deadline that you're trying to meet for this community grant. So this week is week 0, and in week 0, we expect for you to work on your impact and align to the grant. Week 1 would be next week, the week of February 13th. And what we suggest you do is to map out what this grant would look like, right? So if you can click again, Dre, for me. Thank you. So what does that mean? What does Radical Partner mean about mapping out the grant? The first thing is you need to visit the submittable application, and you need to understand all the things and all the layers and documents that they want and need from you. To make your life easier, what we suggest you do is that you create a separate drafting document where you can play and do everything instead of using submittable as such, because you might forget to save. Sometimes, depending on your answer, it might give other, or it might pop up some other questions. So step one, visit the application, read it all, figure it out, and then copy paste all of those questions and move them into a drafting document. We strongly suggest using Google Drive or something that lives online so that it's constantly updating, right? And you don't have to use a Word document and attach it every time you go back and forth with your team. So if it could be an online document where you have all these questions, and this is going to be your playground and your best friend for the next 2-3 weeks. It's going to get messy, and that is okay, right? So do that first so that you end up with a document. And this is literally at RP, we have all these drafting documents where we have the deadline at the top and all of the questions that we need to answer, right? So once you have that mapped out, let's move into step number 4, which is now we need to figure out who's going to answer all those things, right? We need to assign roles. And that means that, first of all, you need to make sure that whomever is going to be involved in this grant writing process has access to that document and is aware that they will be involved in this process, right? So give them access, then tag them in the document or send an email, right? This is what Alia, our Director of Growth and Innovation, does. She's like, okay, we're going to apply for this community grant on March 10th. We have 4 weeks. This is a document. Dre and Joanna, I'm going to need your help. Go to the document, see where you're tagged, and start working on it. And she gives us very particular deadlines. I need you, for example, she says, Dre, I need you to draft by this date. Joanna, I'll give you back the draft by this date so that you can spend this day reviewing, and then we will finalize. So from the beginning, we know where to work, we know who's involved, and we know what we need to do by when. So all of that, we're suggesting you do it next week if you haven't done that so far, right? So that you can end week 1 with a very clear understanding of what you need to do and who will get to it. Let's move into week 2, which would be the week of February 20th, and week 3 would be that last week of Feb, first week of March, right? And we're encouraging you to focus on step 5 here, which is the bulk, we could say the meat of the grant writing, or the eggplant if you're a vegetarian. This is when you're going to be drafting, reviewing, drafting again, and finalizing, right? And we broke this down for you. Feel free to take a screenshot if you want. You have to do your research in terms of what is it that you're going to need, so that you can start getting all those messy responses in your drafting document. Some questions might require for you to dig deep in terms of what is the population that you're going to serve, what has been done in this space before, right? So you're going to have to be doing some reading and some listening, so you can write down those messy responses and start drafting them out. Another tip is for you to mind the word count, right? When you map it out, then you realize that for some answers, maybe you don't need to extend yourself so much. You just need to share a line or two. And then wordsmith to create easy to understand, high impact statements, and to reach the word count, right? So this is more of the drafting, you do you. But as you're drafting, we suggest that you use the submittable features or what you saw in the applications, meaning that sometimes you can use bullets, you can use bold fonts, you can use hyperlinks, and you can leverage all of that. So you do the drafting in a very, very messy way. And once you're done with that initial draft, go back. You or whomever wrote down the answers should go back and review and finalize that first draft. Once that first draft is done, you ask for someone else to review it. It's hard to notice all the typos. It's hard to know when we're making sense and when we're not, when we're so passionate about what we're writing. So always have another pair of eyes. So if you have a team, ask your team to do it. If you don't have a team and have a board, ask a board member to do it. If you don't have a board and you're still like a solo nonprofit leader, ask a friend, ask someone to just read it for you and to give you feedback or to ask questions when they don't understand something. They will always find something. So be ready for that feedback, because whomever reads it is going to find something that's going to be helpful. And once it's been reviewed, apply those edits, review again. You will probably always find something. And then we move into step 6, which is the actual submitting, which will happen the week of the March 6th, right? I think that's Monday, March 6th. You still have time. Give yourself like some time away from the grant. So ideally you wanna be done by March 5th or earlier, so that week you're calmer, you have more time to go back to the application, check that you've answered all of the questions accurately. And then you can start moving your responses to that submittable form, right? By then you don't need to review, you just need to copy paste. And actually, instead of being a stressful process, it's actually very soothing, because you've done it so much that you're just like copy pasting, you have everything. Click save often to make sure that you don't lose your work. And when you're ready, submit. You don't need to wait until March 10th to submit. If you need to, great, you can, but you don't need to. The sooner, the better. Because that means that they will see your application before everybody else's. You all of a sudden become this organization that was proactive, that was on time, that was very excited about this grant. So it kind of puts you someone in the leaderboard, even though it doesn't guarantee anything. It puts your name at the top of that list. So the sooner the better. And then something that we forget to do, because we oftentimes have to submit a grant and then move to another one, is to treat ourselves for the hard work. So literally allow yourself like 30 minutes of dancing, maybe a drink, eating a chocolate, whatever's your thing, and just spend some time celebrating that you submitted that community grant. And then you can get back to work. And once you do, before you forget about the grant, we suggest you mark your calendar for the decision date, right? So that you don't have to remember about this. Your calendar will take care of it for you, and it will remind you, okay, the Miami Foundation will be publishing the results tomorrow. I should be pendiente, as we say in Spanish, right? On what's going to happen. I'm going to take a deep breath. That was a lot. And oftentimes, a lot of leaders submit and they do nothing after. So this is where step 7 comes in. And this is what happens after you submitted the grant. So the first thing that we do is that our way of celebrating, right, is letting the team know that we've submitted the grant. And we literally have a channel that's called Cheers to You. And we say, hey, we submitted the grant 2 days before or before the deadline. And the team just goes crazy with emojis. And we have that moment of celebration. Everybody feels accomplished because they were all part of the grant submission. And then we try to do the same thing with our funders. Sometimes we get replies, sometimes we don't. But in this case, you can send an email to the Miami Foundation staff and say like, hey, thank you so much for the opportunity. Just wanted to flag that we've submitted our application and that we can't wait to hear the results, right? So again, it's a strategy that you have in order to be top of mind for your funders, that you were gracious, that you were on time, and letting them know that that happened. If you can, try to follow on progress, right? Maybe 2 weeks in, you can send them best wishes as they make this tough decision. You can be following on social media as a report on progress. Try to nurture the relationship as much as possible, just because it's a good human trait to have, but also it's a good strategy for you to always be top of mind for the funders. And here's the thing, friends, if you got the grant, right? If you get the grant when they announce it, please thank your funders and go ahead and generate your impact, right? Which is something that we don't do. And sometimes it's hard because we just submit it in a system that we don't know who's going to read it. But email that info at that hello at email. In this case, we do have the Miami Foundation's information, and thank them for believing in you, for investing in you. And the best thing that you can do to thank them back is to deliver what you promised. And if you don't get it, thank them either way. Thank them for the opportunity, ask for feedback. Some of them will give it to you, some of them won't, but it's always worth the ask. And if you got the feedback or you didn't, learn from that experience and try again. We always get a lot of no's. Don't get discouraged by that. This is a hard decision for whomever is on the side of reading the grants. I know that the Miami Foundation received, I think, 400 applications last year. And it is a hard decision for them, right? So thanking them and being in solidarity with whomever is making the decision is always a good move. Okay, so that's what we got for you in terms of content. So I'm going to pause here so that we can hear some of the questions that haven't been answered in the chat, and to give you the opportunity to dig deep into some of these points. I know that some of you might feel super compelled to talk about your application in particular. If you have office hours, you'll have the opportunity to do that. So for today, I would strongly encourage you to try to ask questions around the process, about some of the steps that we presented, so that the answer is not only going to be helpful to you, but to the almost 100 people that we have on the call. So feel free to raise your virtual hand, and I'll try to answer as many questions as possible. Okay. Tom, I see your hand. Tell me.
There we go. Okay. So I'm okay with the process. I'm glad that you broke it down like week by week. The question that I have is a little bit more about what to keep in mind as we're delivering. Like, let's say the grant goes through, we deliver the grant, right? My question is more about like reporting for a mission-focused grant, right? Because since it's unrestricted and it's for the whole organization, like, are we giving them an impact report? Is it like, or is it like, since we're not focusing in on a program that we're, executing from this grant, what would be the proper deliverable, or how to have a successful update to the funders?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tom. And I am so happy to say that when it comes to reporting, with mission-driven grants, it's way easier for us, because they're not asking you for specific metrics. They're asking you for you to report back in the way in which you're already measuring your work. So if that is that you're tracking attendance, if that is that you're tracking testimonials, when they ask you, how are you going to be tracking for that? Tell them what you're already doing. And this is awesome because you don't need to come up with new metrics and new systems, right? So if you do have tracking methods already, this is how you're going to report back to them, right? Because it is a very trust-based approach. So whatever you report back, they're going to celebrate and understand. That is for those of us who already have a tracking system. If you don't, if you're not measuring your impact, I would push you to think, how are you measuring your impact? Because you might not know that you're doing that, but it might be that you're taking pictures of people, that you have WhatsApp messages. So don't come up with anything new. Try to think of what are the 3, 4, 5 ways in which you can prove that you're doing the work that you said that you were going to deliver. Was that specific enough, Tom, or do you need me to go deeper there? Yeah, good. Okay. Joanna, I see your hand raised. Let's go with you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, we are a new foundation, and some of the questions on the application are based on experience. So how do I work around that?
do you have any experience already?
No, I mean, yes, but it's not like operating because we are depending, like it's recently open. So we are depending on volunteer work, but for our goals that we set, we can talk about, I don't know if I make myself clear, like history, you know what you mean? They ask about testimonials, they ask about execution of budgets. So that we don't have at this point.
So let me keep pushing to see if I can get something from you. So you said that you do have experience because you've been working with volunteers so far, right? So you have
Yes.
been doing things, correct?
Correct.
Good. So I would encourage you to not undermine the work that you've been doing. It might not be as structured as you think it is, but speak openly about the experience that you have. And then you can say that you have been working with, let's say, 20 volunteers. This is what they've accomplished, and talk about what you know already and talk about that experience. I think that's the best thing you can do, right? To talk about the work that you've been doing. And of course, in other questions, you can admit that you want to grow, that you want to formalize the organization. But in this case, they do need to see what you've done already and where you are now. So I would encourage you to do that, Joanna. And in some cases, some people might not have, I would say, significant experience. I would say try to apply anyway, because by trying to answer those questions and by hopefully getting feedback from the Miami Foundation, you might learn that they do need more track records from you. And then you know that this is not your year, but that then next year you can try again once you've piloted and tried to do the things in this year.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Awesome. Lena. I think it's Lena, right? Or is it?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. My question is, can we apply to this grant and also apply to another grant that is being offered by Miami Open for Business?
Yes.
Can we? Okay.
Yes, because they're separate programs of the foundation. And then if you want more explanation on those nerdy topics from the foundation, I'm sure they will give it to you, but you will notice that there are different power funds, different teams. So you can.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Travis, what's your question?
Hi, thank you so much. I think it's so wonderful that you're doing trust-based philanthropy, and especially for nonprofits that are just getting started, which is in our case. So I'm looking forward to meeting one-on-one just to get some guidance on which funding category is best suited for us.
Yeah.
But could you just explain a little bit about it, if we have a fiscal agent, the budget that we're going to go by, and the budget that we're being funded for would be with, you know, the under the $50,000, I think it is, or is it the budget of the fiscal agent that's being looked at and their board?
Yeah, they're two separate budgets, right? When they ask you for this grant, like this grant in particular budget, you focus on those 50K or 40K that you're aspiring to, and that's the only money that you talk about. When they ask you, or if they ask you for an operational budget, that's when you do use your fiscal sponsor's budget. Okay,
So the award is based on the annual budget. That wouldn't be our new organization annual budget, which is really low. It would be our fiscal agent, which is very high.
Yes. Yes, but that's why your specific budget for this grant matters, because remember that what they're going to be funding is the mission-driven initiative that you're presenting in that budget. So,
okay.
So don't think that having a high budget is going to affect you negatively.
Okay.
Jamaica, is that how you pronounce your name?
Jamaica Nurses Association.
Yes. Tell me, how can we help?
Yes, so let me just pull back up my chat questions so I can go from that. First of all, I just want to thank you for such a resourceful information. So I don't know if it's pertaining now. We're finding it difficult to apply and be successful because we have been doing this for a while. And when I seek information out there, it seems as if you don't have someone able to help you write your grant, to structure it, which the information you're giving is very good. We don't have anyone on payroll or anything. So it's really just volunteer, as I heard someone mention earlier. Are we chasing the wind in that respect when you don't have any knowledge and experience how to structure a proposal based on even what you're doing in the community?
That's why you're here today, Jamaica, so that you become that person. You do need to be very realistic. All you need is a project lead. That is what you need, whether they are a volunteer, whether that's you do need someone that's like, okay, we're going to do this and I am going to mobilize everybody so that we can do this, right? So can you be the project lead, Jamaica? Okay, so if you're the project lead, I would say you could do this on your own, to be completely honest. Like, you have almost a month, so if you structure yourself, maybe you do one thing a day, right, for 1 hour, and you build so that way you get to a point in which you have everything ready and you could just ask a friend or someone that's around you in the community to review it for you, right? Like, that's the leanest way in which you can do it. But because it's so early on in the process, once you map it out, you will understand what you need from who. So if you can ask for people to volunteer their time and their talent to do that for and with you, great. If you can carve out, I would say, like, maybe $50 an hour. This is something that a younger person in your community might be able to do, right? Maybe they want to improve their writing skills, and you can offer this as an opportunity for them to help you, but for you to teach them something. So that was a long-winded answer to say, yes, you do have a chance, despite the fact that you don't have a grant writing team. That is
so you probably touched on is there any way that what resource out there, or maybe something offline I need to call and discuss to see how you could navigate that resource collaboration, or so? Is there, you can put an information in the chat, probably, would there be a resource even just to get some foundational advice? Or
don't you worry about that. Andreina's got your back. At the end of this session, she will share what you can do, and you could get one-on-one time with the Miami Foundation team or with the Radical Partners team, so we can be more specific about what to do.
So thank you, Joanne, for that good explanation.
Okay, let's go with you, Catherine Toms.
Hey, thank you so much. And to everybody at Radical Partners for helping us with this. I have two quick questions about the application. So when it comes to reporting about the senior leadership and the board, senior leadership means the executive director, right? Just that one person, or does that mean the executive board?
That could mean, I would say, focus on senior leadership as the people that are high ranking in the organization and making decisions. So that could look like in many different ways, right? In our case at Radical Partners, it is myself as the CEO, and then I have Andreina and Alia because they're the directors in the organization. So I talk about us three. For some people, it might be the executive director and the chairs of the board. So it depends on your structure, if it's just one person, 2 or 10, but focus on who is making decisions when it comes to the organization. Those are the ones that you talk about as senior leadership.
Okay, that's good. And when it comes to board leadership, that's everybody on our board, including our advisory board, as well as the executive board.
Do you have, no, you said you have a board of directors and an advisory board, correct?
Yes.
So I would focus on the board of directors because those are the ones that have fiscal responsibilities for the organization.
For the senior leadership? So there are two questions, senior leadership and board leadership.
Okay, so they're separate things. Senior leadership, think of like the daily execution, right? So whomever's leading the organization, if there are other people making decisions, you list them, 2 or 3 people. And then board leadership, you talk about your board in general, and you point out who the board chairs are.
Okay. Then the other question was, when it comes to the annual operating budget reporting, our new nonprofit has a small operating budget, but we're partnering on this with other groups in Miami-Dade County. One is nonprofit and one is for-profit, and that's okay. So how should I report that operating budget based on the one that has the biggest budget, the smallest budget, or everybody together? Or how should I pick that category? Because and maybe other people have that problem too.
In this case, focus on the operational budget of the nonprofit, Catherine, because they are funding nonprofits.
The leading nonprofit, or, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, I'll take 2 more questions live, and I see some questions in the chat, so I'll go over them when I pass the mic to Dre to make sure that you all have answers. But I have Vivian and Tanisha.
Hi, good afternoon. I didn't know who wanted to go first. Sorry.
You go first. To the mic.
Okay, really quick. I just had a clarifying question regarding the board and operating budget.
Yep.
My organization is the March Dimes, and so we have, a board for overall for our organization, but as a part of our different markets, we also have a market board. So my board would be South Florida Market, and so we have a board and we have a chair for our South Florida market. So for this grant, would it be based off of our overall organizational board or our South Florida market board?
I would say focus on your South Florida board, but don't be afraid of explaining the whole structure, right?
Okay.
So if you're going to be presenting this as an attachment, which you can, you say, this is our South Florida market board, boom. And just so that you know, this is the board in general. And then if you're doing that in a question, I would make the differentiation as well.
Okay, perfect. And last clarifying question is for the operating budget. The operating budget would be for our entire organization, like the March of Dimes itself, because our South Florida market, we don't have our own separate operating budget, because as a part of the larger organization, it comes from that. So it would come from our larger organizational operational budget.
That is correct. And then this is where it's helpful for us to put ourselves in the shoes of the funder. What the funder needs to prove and to have, like literally fiscal evidence, is who are they funding, right? So in this case, they're funding the overall nonprofit. So that's the operational budget that they need to learn and understand and have in their records. So when you're having trouble about that, think, who are they giving the money to? And that's who we're presenting as the operating budget or the organization that goes in there.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Vivian, what's your question?
Oh, hi. Thank you very much for your time and your advice. In the first meeting that we had prior to this one, they said that we could apply in 2 different ways. One as a individual organization, and the second, partnering with another organization. If you partner with another organization, that it's not going to be a fiscal agent, but we are going to still be the leader organization. Can we apply 2 times or only 1 in 2 different ways?
So are they, because I understand that you want to collaborate with an organization, right? Or is it that you have 2 different things that you want to propose?
No, I want to know which would be the best way to apply, because we are collaborating probably with other 1 or 2 nonprofits that can benefit of our program. And then I would like to know if we should do that like in a collaboration application, and then another one individually, if that's going to affect, like if it's okay to apply 2 times. Otherwise we would apply only 1 time, like individually.
Yeah, I would say if this were to be a programmatic grant, maybe 2 or 3 applications could work, because you would be pitching different things. But this time around, they would be funding you, the organization. So I would strongly encourage you to only apply once with you as the lead, and do mention all the collaborators. That only adds point to your application because it means that your reach is bigger, right? And you're going to go farther together. But I would strongly encourage you to just apply once, as it's a mission-driven grant.
Yeah, so there's no, it's not correct to apply for the same mission in two different ways, like a collaboration or
No,
like or individual.
unless, because I don't know what the mission is, right? Unless the other nonprofit has a different approach and then they apply, but it's not you two applications. You apply with your mission at the forefront, and then your other partner could apply with their mission at the forefront, and they could mention you as a collaborator, but they're different missions if you want to see it that way. So the foundation can choose which one they want to support.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, my friends, I could keep answering questions to the best of my ability as much as I can, but we only have a few more minutes left. And I know Andreina has some more goodies for you as you head into this adventure of submitting your grant on March 10th. So I'll stick in the chat and see what I can do in there, but passing the mic to you, Dre.
I sure do. Thank you so much, Joanne, for sharing your wisdom and experience with this grant. And thanks to everyone for asking all of your great questions. We're all learning alongside you. So we did share that we were going to share a bonus resource or tool towards the end. So I wanted to bring back one of our favorite things at Radical Partners, which are the SMARTY goals. Is this new to anyone in the room? Or if you've heard of this before, this will be a great recap and definitely something that you should bring into your application. So we know that goals drive results, but by adding this explicit inclusion and equity component, the goals are going to allow us to produce better outcomes for marginalized communities and to address disparities and support belonging. So this is a tool that we've pulled from the Management Center, one of our favorite resources that shares so much around nonprofit leadership and management. So I'll go into the different meanings of all of these things because they're definitely different layers that you should bring into your application. So let's be specific and let's be strategic in that process. We want to reflect this dimension of what your organization is seeking to accomplish with your mission and with your vision. We want to be really measurable. So what does that mean? That means that you have a set of standards that you hope to meet, that you all agree on, that allows you to share that the goal has been met. So whether that's numbers or defined quantities or qualities, you're very clear on what success looks like. Third, you're making it very ambitious goal. So you're challenging what that achievement looks like and what significant progress looks like. So you're really stretching your organization and you're developing really ambitious goals for the mission to reach the vision that you're setting for your organization. But still, we want to be relevant and we want to be realistic. There's only so many funds that you can tap into through this grant proposal. So you want to be very realistic about what those funds will allow you to accomplish. It's going to show that you really thought through the resources, the capacity, and the execution layers, and it's going to help you track your worth and your time in accomplishing them. As Joanne shared before, through our different steps, you want to share really clear deadlines. So just as it goes through the grant writing process, you want to show that over the course of the 2 years that you could be funded, that you have very clear deadlines for how you're going to meet those goals. And then these two additional layers, the inclusivity and the equitable aspects, allow you to be really thoughtful about the folks that are traditionally marginalized and aren't gaining that impact through your organization. So think through the processes, through your activities, and your decision-making policies, and include people in a way that shows that you're sharing power with everyone. And then, of course, we want to be equitable in every element of our organization. So you're seeking to address systemic injustice, inequity, or oppression, and solving for those systemic issues. So my colleague Itza will post more about where you can learn about these SMARTY goals if this is the first time that you see them through the Management Center. And they also have worksheets, and we'll share everything, all of the layers that I just shared with you here. And before we go, I also wanted to reiterate something that Joanne shared earlier, that it is really important as you're writing out this proposal to keep the promises that you're making. So we always say at Radical Partners, let's under promise and over deliver, because the amount of funds, you have to think of what it'll really enable you to accomplish. And sometimes it's the case that you're able to squeeze some more impact out of that. So, and that's a great thing to share back on once you've landed the grant and once you're continuing to impact your communities. So with those steps and with all of what we've shared today, definitely the big takeaway is that you're not alone. You have been in a group of over 100 people who are going through the same thing as you. You've got support from us at Radical Partners. You've got support from the Miami Foundation. And thanks to their support, these teams are here to support you in both applying, submitting, and thinking through the strategy in between. So we've been offering strategy and grant writing office hours through the Community Grants website. But to be honest, they are quite maxed out already. So we've just opened up our bi-weekly office hours at Radical Partners to squeeze some more of you in. Itza is going to be sharing the website shortly, but know that you can always go to the Community Grants information website to tap into the Miami Foundation team. They are available almost daily to help you determine those fundraising categories that are aligned to the mission of your organization. You can ask them questions about logistics and submission around the application, learn about the application rules, and better understand the disbursement and the deadlines. So if you want to tap into our support, I said that we opened up the bi-weekly office hours, and those are great for once you've already identified your funding category, you've read through everything like Joanne recommended, you can meet up with us to get grounded in what you're applying for and why, so grounding yourself in the purpose. We can workshop together through challenging questions once you've read through the application, and you can get some feedback from us on the answers that you're drafting. We've got some tight word counts there, so we can help you wordsmith and make sure that you're writing a really impactful summary for the questions. We can also brainstorm around that mission-focused storytelling. So have you really tell the story of your organization in an impactful way. And if you're ready early and you're super punctual, as some of you showed up early today, we can help you review and access that formal feedback on your application. So on those bi-weekly office hours, we have availability on the 23rd and on the 9th, just before the day where you have to submit. So run over and book your coaching slot at the link that Itza is posting here. So with all that, you all know that we love our feedback. So I'm going to post a quick poll to get your thoughts and to learn a little bit more about how we can continue supporting you. And while thank you for the kind notes in the chat, that's so sweet. While you're all filling this out, I will just leave you to converse with one another on chat. I know that some of you have been sharing some questions with Joanne so that she can catch up with you all. And I'll leave our information up in case you have any further questions. We're really grateful to the Miami Foundation for looping us in and allowing us to show up for you and to support you in this process. And we can't wait to learn that you've applied, to learn that some of you will land the grant, and to help supporting you along the way. Thanks, everyone.